Hi, my name is Milt. I'm Milt Bedingfield. I'm a diabetes educator and exercise physiologist. I teach in a major hospital. I teach diabetes pretty much every day of the week to patients with diabetes. And one of the things that comes up sometimes, a story that I tell in the midst of my classes, it's about a party I went to years and years ago, and something I thought was quite funny. Years ago, a lot of my friends were endurance athletes. They rode their bikes long distances, or they ran marathons, or they did triathlons. A lot of my people I hung around with, that's what they did. And I was invited to a Christmas party, and a lot of my friends were there. And so, in one of the rooms, I guess the dining room, they had taken all the furniture out and had a big dining room table, and they put all the food, all the brownies and cupcakes and fudge and all that on the table. And I happened to be walking into the room, and I saw one of my friends standing on one side of the table, and a lady, a middle-aged lady, standing on the other side of the table. And I just stopped for some reason, and I was observing them, and my friend had picked up a nice holiday plate, and he's looking at the table, and he's you know, just about everything he looks at, he picks up and puts on his plate. He reaches over here and puts this on his plate and this, and sometimes it never made it to plate, it went straight in his mouth. And then he's looking at something else, and he noticed that the lady across from him was staring at him. And of course, what I noticed is she was standing there with her plate, just looking at my friend. And so he's getting his food, and all of a sudden he notices she's staring, and he stops, and he looks at her and goes, "Hi, how are you?" And she goes, "Fine, how are you?" But she didn't sound nearly as friendly as he did. And he went ahead and continued working his way down the table, collecting more food, putting them in his mouth. He had a pretty good amount on his plate. As for her, she was looking at her plate and looking at all the food, and she was really scrutinizing everything on the table, and she looked really carefully at it before she put it on her plate. Then sometimes she'd start to reach for it and apparently change her mind and not grab it, or she'd start to grab this and no, maybe not. And then with all the grabbing my friend was doing, putting food on his plate, she couldn't help but just stop and observe him. And then she looks at him and she says, "You disgust me." And he goes, he looked quite startled at her, and of course he had to finish chewing the food in his mouth before he said anything. He goes, "Excuse me?" And she goes, "You disgust me." And he goes, "Ma'am, I just met you. How can I disgust you? Look at all that food you're putting on your plate. Anything you look at, you put on your plate. Look at me. Look what I got on my plate." And of course she had just like a little 1 by 1 inch brownie. And she goes, "I look at this, I'd love to have all this food too, but I can't." And he goes, "Why can't you?" She goes, "Look, if I eat more than this, I'll probably be wearing this on my hips tomorrow as it is." She goes, "It's not fair." He goes, "What do you mean it's not fair? Look at you. You can eat all that. Look how thin you are. Look at me. I eat this, I'm going to put weight on. It's just not fair." Well, at that point, his attitude changed, and the look on his face changed. And all of a sudden, instead of looking shocked as to why she was attacking him about the food he ate, all of a sudden it was, "Let me ask you something. Let me finish chewing this last brownie. What were you doing at 5 o'clock this morning?" And she looks at him and goes, "Sleeping. I was running 15 miles. Don't tell me it's not fair." And then he went on and continued eating his food. The point is, it's perfectly okay that she was sleeping. A lot of people sleep at 5 o'clock in the morning. But he made the decision to get up and run 15 miles. No one made him do it. He did that on his own free will because that's what he likes to do. But because he went and ran his 15 miles, and some of the mornings might run 6 or 7 miles, he is capable of eating a whole lot more food without it showing up on his body. Now again, the lady didn't have to do that, and she chose not to. But she's got to be a whole lot more careful with what she eats because she's not burning the calories that my friend burns. It's all about choices. I tell people with diabetes, if you really want to have that bowl of ice cream before bedtime, or you really don't want to give up this particular snack, maybe you don't have to. Maybe all you need to do is exercise more. Exercise can go a long way as far as allowing you to eat a little bit more and getting away with it. A lot of my friends used to tease, all of my friends that did the endurance activities, when people say, well, why do you ride your bike 100 miles, or why do you run a marathon? They'd say, because I can eat whatever I want. Well, that really wasn't the reason why they were doing the activities, but it certainly was a nice side effect. And it's true, most of my friends were slim, because they were busy all the time doing running or riding or swimming. And if you're able to do that sort of thing, you can eat more food. If you're not willing to do that sort of thing, or don't like to do that sort of thing, then you have to be more careful with what you eat. And I eventually traveled into the room myself and got my food, and I chuckled the whole time thinking how funny this was.